Imagine throwing a birthday party for your daughter, decorating the entire backyard, and no one shows up, not a single friend. 8-year-old Emma sits quietly under the fading balloons, her sparkly dress catching the afternoon sun, but the yard is empty. Her mom, Sarah, stands nearby holding a cake with 8 flickering candles fighting against the Texas wind, forcing a smile to hide the sinking feeling in her chest. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzes, a message from one of the parents. Who wants to celebrate a kid with no dad around? The words hit like a punch, but she swallows the hurt to keep Emma's hope alive. Because Emma's hope wasn't gone yet, she had a secret plan, one she kept hidden, even from her mom. Welcome to Revenge Her Way. Now, what happens next will change everything. John was more than just a husband or a father. He was a hero, a warrior with a heart as big as Texas itself. A former Marine who'd served 2 tours overseas. He was the kind of man who carried the weight of the world on his broad shoulders, but never let it crush the laughter out of his little girl's life. Every evening, after long days covered in grease and dirt from fixing his beloved Harley Davidson, John would come home with stories, wild adventures from his time in the Corps, or tales of the open road with his motorcycle club, the Steel Brotherhood. To Emma, he wasn't just her daddy. He was her protector, her best friend, her biggest hero. Their bond was unbreakable. John taught Emma how to patch up a broken toy, how to ride a bike without training wheels, and how to never back down from a challenge. On weekends, they'd ride together, the wind whipping through Emma's hair as John's deep voice hummed country tunes. But all of that ended in a heartbeat. 2 years ago, John was deployed on a humanitarian mission to help flood victims in Louisiana after one of the worst storms in recent history. It was supposed to be a quick mission: help, then come home. But a roadside explosion changed everything. John never made it back. The call came late one night, just after dinner, shattering Sarah's world and leaving Emma clinging to the pieces. Since then, Sarah has been doing everything she can to hold it together for Emma, but the silence left by John's absence fills every corner of their home. Emma, now 8, carries her daddy's memory like a sacred treasure. She keeps his dog tags in a little pouch, carries his photo tucked in her backpack, and every night before bed, she whispers, "Good night, Daddy," hoping he hears her somewhere beyond the stars. Her grief isn't loud or angry. It's quiet, steady, and deep. Emma still expects to see him walk through the door any day now, to hear his laughter, to feel his arms around her. She never stopped believing. What would you do if you were an 8-year-old girl holding on to hope so tightly you decided to write a letter, a secret letter, hoping it might bring back the people your daddy loved most? Emma's small hands trembled as she carefully folded the letter she had spent hours writing in secret. It wasn't just any letter. It was an invitation, a desperate hope wrapped in crayon and glue, addressed to the men who had meant everything to her dad. From an old, dusty box in the garage, she'd found the faded address scrawled on a torn piece of paper. John's old friend Cal, a name whispered with respect and loyalty. She didn't tell her mom. Not yet. Because sometimes the bravest thing a kid can do is to carry hope all alone. When Sarah stumbled upon the letter hidden behind the party favors, she felt a rush of emotions: pride, heartbreak, and a fierce protective instinct. The words were simple, but raw and honest. "My daddy was the bravest man I know, and I would love if you could come to my birthday." Her 8-year-old's handwriting was uneven, the ink smudged in places, but the message was crystal clear. Emma wasn't just reaching out for guests, she was reaching for a connection, for a family she feared was slipping away. For 2 years, Sarah had shut that door tight. The calls from John's biker brothers went unanswered. The cards and condolences collected dust. She had buried herself in grief, convinced that keeping the past locked away was the only way to protect Emma. But here, in that letter, was a child's courage breaking through the silence. Sarah realized that in trying to shield her daughter, she'd been keeping them both isolated. Heart pounding, Sarah dialed Cal's number, the same one Emma had found. When he answered, his voice was steady, but heavy with the weight of memories. Sarah's words stumbled out. Introductions, thanks, and finally, the truth about Emma's letter. There was a long pause, and then Cal's voice softened. "I read that letter twice," he said. "She's got her daddy's heart." The floodgates opened. Cal spoke of their shared pain, their own hesitations to reach out, afraid of overstepping or reopening wounds. But Emma's letter changed everything. It was a call they couldn't ignore, a promise that someone still remembered John and cared enough to show up. When grief silences you, sometimes it takes the voice of a child to break through, and Emma's voice was louder than anyone expected. But what happened next wasn't just about a birthday party. It was about reclaiming family, healing old wounds, and finding light in the darkest places. The sun was dipping low behind the Texas horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and fiery orange, when the distant rumble began. At first, it was barely audible, just a faint growl on the wind. But then, one by one, the engines roared louder and louder, shaking the quiet street outside Sarah's house. 25 Harley-Davidsons rolled slowly into view, their riders clad in worn leather jackets, patches catching the fading light, faces weathered, but eyes fierce with purpose. They weren't just any group of bikers. They were John's brothers from the Steel Brotherhood, the men who had stood beside him through every battle, every midnight ride. Each carried a piece of John with them, faded bandanas, patches from old rides, even his dog tags tucked safely in pockets. And with them, they brought gifts, a cooler full of sodas, homemade cupcakes, and most touching of all, a tiny beagle puppy with a red ribbon tied around its neck. John had once promised Emma she'd have a dog, and now, in this moment, that promise was kept. Emma stood at the edge of the porch, her eyes wide, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and joy. When she spotted the first biker removing his helmet, she gasped. There was Cal, just like in the pictures from the old box in the garage. Her lips trembled as the weight of everything finally hit her. This was real. They had come. One by one, the bikers approached, kneeling down to Emma's level. They spoke softly of John, the fearless leader, the loyal friend, the man who never left a brother behind. Stories spilled out, tales of courage in the face of danger, laughter shared on the road, and a bond that went deeper than blood. Emma listened, her heart swelling with a new kind of strength. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. These men, rugged and rough around the edges, were here not just to honor her dad, but to become a part of her family. As the sun set and the first candles were lit once more, a chorus of voices rang out, rough, cracking, and full of emotion. "Happy birthday, Emma!" The sound echoed into the Texas night, louder than any silence that had come before. Sometimes family comes on two wheels, roaring louder than any silence. But what would this unexpected brotherhood mean for Sarah, Emma, and the road ahead? The backyard, once quiet and empty, now buzzed with life. The kind of life Sarah hadn't heard in what felt like forever. Laughter spilled out beneath the string lights, mingling with the scent of fresh-cut grass and warm Texas evening air. The Steel Brotherhood had transformed what was supposed to be a lonely birthday into a celebration that felt like a balm for the soul. Emma's eyes sparkled as she received her first ever leather jacket. Tiny and soft, stitched with patches that told stories of courage and loyalty. One of the bikers patiently showed her how to polish a gleaming chrome motorcycle, her small hands awkward but eager to learn. And then there was Buddy, the little beagle with a red ribbon, who instantly became Emma's new best friend, curling up in her lap like he'd always belonged there. Sarah watched all this unfold with a lump in her throat, the years of loneliness and fear melting away for the first time. She wasn't alone anymore. Not really. For 2 long years, she had carried the weight of grief like a silent burden, thinking she had to protect Emma by shutting the world out. But now, surrounded by men who loved her husband like brothers, she felt the walls around her heart begin to crack. Those same brothers rolled up their sleeves and got to work. repairing the fence that had been battered by storms, planting fresh flowers along the garden beds, restoring the yard not just physically, but spiritually. It was as if their hands were stitching together the broken pieces of a family, piece by piece. This wasn't just a birthday party, it was a rebirth, a testament to the strength found in connection, even when everything feels lost. The community that once seemed so distant had shown up, proving that healing doesn't have to happen alone. What happens when strangers become family and grief turns into hope? Sarah, Emma, and the Steel Brotherhood were about to find out, and none of them would ever be the same again. There are days when the silence feels heavier than any words could ever be, when the memories flood back so sharply, you catch your breath and wonder if you'll ever truly heal. Emma and I have walked through that silence together. We've learned that grief isn't a thing you get over. It's a shadow that shifts with you, sometimes shrinking, sometimes looming larger than before. I remember one evening, as Emma hugged Buddy close, her new little dog, a gift from the men who reminded her she wasn't alone. She whispered something that stopped me cold. "Sometimes," she said, looking up at me with those wide, honest eyes, "saying you miss someone is the bravest thing you can do." And she's right. Saying it aloud feels like tearing open a wound. But holding it inside? That's a weight no child or adult should carry alone. For so long, I tried to carry that weight by myself. I thought shielding Emma from pain meant shutting the door to John's past, to his friends, to the brotherhood that loved him fiercely. But love doesn't work like that. Love finds a way, even through the cracks we try to hide behind. When those bikers showed up, when they fixed our broken fence and brought light back into our yard, they reminded me that grief doesn't have to isolate us. Sometimes it's the bridge to something new, a family forged not just by blood, but by loyalty, by memory, by the unspoken promise to never forget. I won't pretend it's all healed. There are still mornings when the ache is raw, when the what-ifs and if-onlys crowd my mind. There are things I never got to say to John, and things I'm still learning to forgive myself for. But in those moments, I remind myself of Emma's courage, the letter she wrote, the hope she dared to hold on to. It's a lesson I carry with me now, that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest hope. And sometimes we have to let love find us, even when the world feels like it's turned its back. If this story has touched you, if you've ever felt alone in your grief or silenced by pain, know you're not the only one. There's power in sharing, in reaching out, in letting someone in. So if you feel moved, if you see a piece of your own story here, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts below, or subscribe to Revenge Her Way. This isn't just a channel. It's a place where broken stories find strength and where no one has to face the darkness alone. Because no one should ever feel forgotten. And sometimes love rides in when you need it most.